What makes a sitcom character truly great? Which sitcom characters make themselves so memorable that they stick in our mind and leave a long-lasting impression?
It's gonna feel so good getting this thing off my chest.
Is it the vain yet insecure man with a plan type? Is it the crazy, wacky, but ultimately lovable man-child? Or is it the audience stand-in, the straight man whose reactions color just how absurd the world around them is? At the end of the day, there's no real objective answer for a question like that. For me personally, however, I've realized that what I find myself most drawn to in sitcoms is relatability. I laugh the hardest at characters who I feel a sense of kinship to, who I can picture putting myself in their shoes. There's nothing funnier than a character that can make you laugh at yourself by laughing at them, making you open your eyes to some flaw, shortcoming, or bad habit within yourself that is manifested through them. And no character represents the epitome of flaw in the world of sitcoms better than the self-proclaimed Lord of the Idiots, George Costanza.
For I am Costanza, Lord of the Idiots.
In Seinfeld, while every character is flawed in their own right, in this band of 4 selfish, ungrowing characters, none can compete with George in terms of sheer despicability, selfishness, bitterness, and total dishonesty. George Costanza is as neurotic as a sitcom character can come, and is an utterly unlikable human being to those around him, save for the only 3 people in the world who seem to put up with his terrible personality. And yet, despite being the almost objectively worst person out of this gang, I found myself getting further attached to him with every passing episode of the show. The more we saw of him and his neuroses, his bad behavior, and his strange antics, the more I liked and related to him, and the funnier he became.
Did you take that book with you into the bathroom?
What do you want to hear?
It was only when I watched the show start to finish that I could fully realize what made this character such a hit for me and for so many other people around the world. I finally understood what made this character such an icon of the sitcom genre, and one of the most well-known, most loved sitcom characters to this day, despite himself being one of the most neurotic jerks on television. To me, the simple beauty of George Costanza lies in his complete and total moral bankruptcy. As a viewer, I'm not usually drawn to asshole-type characters, but with George it was different. The reason why I love this character so much is because he represents almost every single bad trait the modern man can have. He's selfish, he's cheap, he's insecure, and yet has bouts of overconfidence. He's lazy, he's almost permanently anxious, he's obsessive, and he's practically a pathological liar.
But I'm disturbed. I'm depressed. I'm inadequate. I got it all.
By virtue of housing and portraying all these terrible characteristics at once, George Costanza achieves ultimate guilty relatability. Costanza, with his innumerable neuroses, is almost guaranteed to have a particular flaw that resonates with you. Over the course of 9 seasons, it's almost hard not to have at least one moment where you see George having a crazy, disproportionate overreaction to something and thinking, wow, I actually feel him on this one. George simply covers so many terrible bases, it's hard not to relate to one of them. It's hard not to see a certain flaw within yourself reflected in an absurd, most probably exaggerated manner within George. George, in a show that ended around 25 years ago, still to this day perfectly encapsulates the modern neurotic individual, with all their guilty pleasures, all their inconsistencies, all their sometimes humorous shortcomings, all their meaningless anxieties, and all their fantastical desires. George is just so damn relatable, at least to me. Sometimes I just can't help but look at him getting angry over his girlfriend taking credit over a big salad that he bought for Elaine, and thinking, damn, that's exactly how I'd feel. I can't help but get upset with him when his old friend skips out on apologizing for embarrassing him years prior, even though he's intentionally apologizing to everyone else. Sure, I can never take the extreme, anger-fueled, bitter-to-the-core approaches that George takes in response to these situations, but I can understand where they're coming from. And I can see how crazy it would be if I ever did choose to act on these unhinged impulses by watching George do it for me. It's both fulfilling and satisfying to see your innermost anxieties get validated through this wacky character, to feel like you're not the only person in the world who has these insane thoughts at times, and yet to be reminded that acting on those ridiculously dark parts of yourself will only ever end up in you making a fool out of yourself.
You came to see me. I work in the building.
What do you do?
I'm an architect.
George embarrassing himself time and time again helped me come to terms with the fact that we, as people, have silly thoughts sometimes and do utterly silly things. And this facet of sick relatability made Seinfeld so much funnier to me, because it was almost like I was laughing at myself. To top it all off, it also helps to know that George as a character is largely based on Larry David himself, the man who predominantly wrote the show, which in turn serves to make this character and its portrayal all the more realistic, since I know that it's based on a real, living, breathing human being who had similar thoughts and lived through similar situations. We can't talk about how great of a character George Costanza is without giving credit to Jason Alexander, the man himself, whose acting really gave the character life. It's such a hard balance playing such an inherently unloved, unlikable character in a way that's still endearing and eventually likable. And it's a testament to Alexander's massive skills as an actor, which only seem to grow further and further with every season. Despite Costanza's grand, over-the-top gestures and reactions, Alexander never let his acting take the character into the unrealistic. George was always a somewhat realistic character, albeit one that was simultaneously absurd. While it often felt like it'd be hard to find someone as crazy and neurotic as George, it never felt like it was completely impossible. And this is all thanks to the way Alexander portrays him and grounds him as a character. He truly stole the show for me every episode, and I found myself almost enraptured by his performances, just wondering how much crazier he can dial this character up with hilarious mannerisms and line delivery.
This is not good. Worlds are colliding. George is getting upset.
Ultimately, to me, George is funny because he's an icon, a landmark of what it's like to live and breathe in our modern world, and a perfect representative of all our hidden faults and neuroses. A similar, interesting perspective I found while researching this topic describes George as a postmodern folk hero, an interpretation I can't help but agree with. In her essay from 1999, Why is George So Funny? Television Comedy, Trickster, Heroism, and Cultural Studies, Barbra S. Morris further explores the question of why George resonates so strongly with viewers despite the character's disagreeable nature. George demonstrates to an enormously faithful television audience how ridiculous the complicated business of modern-day work life can be. Morris focuses on George's work antics in particular, his constant efforts to evade responsibility even further and offer himself a lazier existence. But Morris doesn't just consider George an unambitious sloth, but rather a trickster hero who lies and cheats his way through a rigged system. He's kind of the working class man, the underdog trying his hardest to fit in and adapt with a group of money-hungry, mostly ignorant executives and corporate moguls. Though he lies and he cheats, he does it to keep his footing in a society riddled with hypocrisies and deceits. This perspective further adds to my view of George Costanza as the modern neurotic man by also attributing to him the struggles of the overwhelmed working man. He's a terrible person with terrible schemes who does terrible things, and it makes him relatable to the flaws within all of us, and I simply love him for it. I love to laugh at George Costanza because he is literally me. To me, he is the greatest sitcom character of all time.
Instead of castigating me, you should all be thanking me. What kind of a topsy-turvy world do we live in where heroes are cast as villains, brave men as cowards?
Thank you so much for watching. Obviously, as I said when I started this video, there's no real objective way to measure who the best character in sitcom history is. People view these shows in different ways and with different perspectives, and I know that George's unlikability is too much for some viewers. I just hope I made it clear why I like him as a character so much. Let me know what you think down in the comments and tell me who your favorite sitcom character is. Tell me if you even like George in general or whatever other Seinfeld character you may enjoy. And if you liked the video, consider subscribing and leaving me a little thumbs up. For my old viewers, if any of you are still around, I know I've been gone for quite a while, but life has been happening and I have thus been incredibly busy with work, as in my actual full-time job. However, I should be back now, and for good, I hope. I'm going to try my best to keep some semblance of a consistent upload schedule. I hope that works out for me, and I hope that you'll stick around for the ride. I appreciate you all, and once again, thanks for watching. Take care. I hope to see you soon. Goodbye.